What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. Last time we were here, we spoke about what cameras I use, so I figured it would be a good idea to talk about what lenses I use and why. Let's get into it. I've had several lenses over the years. Some of them are kit lenses that came with my cameras, and other ones are just lenses that I've purchased for a specific purpose. The first lens that we're gonna be talking about is my Sony A6300 kit lens. Now, this is a 16 to 50 millimeter range, and the aperture is from 3.5 to 5.6. I've had this for a decent amount of time. I actually don't even have that camera anymore. I sold it to purchase my Sony A7C. And I thought I would be using this lens a lot more recently just because I was like, you know what, I want something compact, let me throw it on. And I was using it on my A6300 just to kind of mess around. If I didn't want to bring a bigger lens with me, it was perfect. So it's kind of just been staying home collecting dust on my shelf. I don't know if I'll ever sell this lens just because it's so small and cool and compact, but you never know. In the meantime, it's just gonna keep collecting dust on my shelf until I figure out what to do with it. The next lens that we're gonna be talking about is my Sony 28 to 60 millimeter lens. This is another kit lens, and this one came with my Sony A7C. The thing I don't like about this lens is in order to just start using it, I have to actually push it out first, and then I can zoom in and out with it. And if you ask me, that's really annoying because every time I shoot, I turn the camera on and off. I have to push the lens out and put it back in and push it out and put it back in. And it's really just annoying. But the only reason I got it is because I bought my camera locally as opposed to from ordering it from a camera store, and they didn't sell just the body where I purchased it from. So I was like, you know what, let me just get the kit lens because it's always good to have just as an emergency backup if something happens to one of my lenses. And I also think it's cool as a package deal if I do ever sell the camera. Let's say somebody wants to buy it, but they're just starting out, they'll be able to purchase the kit lens with it also. So I'm not going in any particular order here. I'm kind of just grabbing whatever lens is behind me that's next. But the next lens that we're gonna be talking about is my Sony 16 to 35 millimeter f4. Now this lens, the main purpose I purchased it for was for vlogging. I bought it not long after purchasing my Sony A7C, which is the camera that we're currently filming on. And at the time, the widest focal length I had was 24 millimeters. And although that's still pretty wide for vlogging, I felt like it wasn't wide enough because I tend to hold the camera pretty close to me when I'm vlogging. So I wanted something more wide angle. And the reason I went with the f4 as opposed to the 2.8 G Master was because I only plan to use this for vlogging. I'm sure I can use this lens for events and professional work, but the main purpose was just to have a good vlogging lens, and I didn't want to spend too much on it because the overall purpose is to be a beat around lens. The goal is to have this on my A7C at almost all times, so that way if I ever want to film something outside in the moment, I have this, I'm ready, and I won't feel as bad if I accidentally drop or scratch this because it didn't cost as much as the 2.8 G Master. All right, the next lens that we're gonna be talking about is my 24 to 70 G Master lens. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. I just said I didn't feel like purchasing the 16 to 35 G Master because I was gonna beat on it. And I do use this lens for a lot of stuff. Before I purchased the 16 to 35, this was the lens that I would bring practically everywhere with me. Currently on this, I don't have the lens cap because I don't know what I did with it. And you'll also notice that I have polarizers on most of the lenses that I'm showing you because I do a lot of automotive stuff. But anyways, I purchased this camera to be my overall camera for when I'm doing professional work. If I'm taking photos, if I'm doing a video shoot, this is typically the lens that I use. This was one of my more accomplished and bigger purchases as a photographer and videographer. It's very versatile and I love having the f2.8. I love the sharpness on it. And I love that I can zoom from 24 all the way to 70 and constantly have that f2.8. This is a really great lens. It produces great results. And I really just bought it to be the overall professional lens. I also really like using this lens on the gimbal. My favorite combo so far would have to be the A7C paired with this lens when I'm flying the gimbal. That's because I get the nice tight zoom range of 70, but I also get the nice wideness of 24. And like I said before, it is a very, very sharp lens. And anytime I choose to use this lens for a project, I always end up loving the results. All right, so now we're gonna do a 2-for-1. The next two lenses that we're going to be talking about are my two Sony prime lenses. Now, here I have the Sony 50mm f1.8, and here I have the Sony 85mm f1.8. Both of these lenses I essentially bought for photography. Now, I do use them for videography from time to time, but the autofocus on the 50mm isn't that great because it's so cheap. And I don't do too much video with the 85mm because it's a very tight focal length, and I find myself, after I get one or two shots, having to want to zoom out or back up really far. So these lenses primarily are just for photography. I don't often use them for video, but there are occasions where I'm just like, okay, maybe I do want that tight shot, maybe I do want that f1.8, and I'll throw one of these on just to kind of get that nice zoomed or extra shallow depth of field or extra brightness at night. But they're usually not on the camera for very long when I'm doing video. They're primarily just for photos. Now, talking specifically about the 85mm, gives you a really nice compressed background, especially if you have the 1.8, because you also get that really nice shallow depth of field. And I do have to say, all the times that I've used this lens for photography, I love it. Whether it's for cars, whether it's shooting with a model, for events, all of the photos that I've taken with this lens have just looked absolutely amazing. Now, the next lens that we're gonna be talking about is my Canon 24mm T1.5. Now, this is a cinema lens, and you're probably asking me, how do I go from a whole bunch of photography lenses to a cinema lens? And the answer for that is I use this primarily on my Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera. Now, I've done a whole bunch of videos talking about that camera, and I've spoken about this lens specifically on the channel. But essentially, I purchased this when I purchased my Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 4K camera. I got it because when I purchased that camera, I was on a little bit of a budget and I couldn't afford anything else. So I went with this because it was the most affordable I could get at the time. Within a few months of purchasing the camera, I actually picked up another lens. So I haven't used this in a while, and it was actually sitting in the box until a recent project came up and I was really able to utilize this to its full potential, but I don't really use it. It's a micro 4/3 mount because it's for the Blackmagic camera. So I can only use it with that camera, which, you know, it kind of makes sense why I haven't used it in so long, because the next lens that I'm about to show you, once I purchased it, I really didn't have a need for this. But some of the benefits that I learned recently about this is I can get really close-up shots with this. The macro capabilities on this lens are actually really nice. I get that really good detail and a really nice shallow depth of field as well. So that's primarily what I'm gonna be using this lens for moving forward. I contemplated selling it or doing a giveaway or something like that with it, and I don't know, I still might, but for now it just kind of sits in the box, not even like out on the shelf or anything. I keep this thing in the box, and unless I really need to use it, this lens pretty much lives there. All right, so the final two lenses that we're going to be talking about are my two Canon zoom lenses. Now, in this hand, I have a Canon 10 to 18mm zoom lens, and in this hand, I have a Canon 24 to 105 zoom lens. Now, the 10 to 18 I purchased way back when I had my Sony A6300, and the reason I purchased it was because at the time I wanted a wide lens to do, I think I was trying to do real estate photography at the time, and I didn't have a very wide lens, and this is actually the second one of these that I've owned. The reason I sold the last one is because I went from Canon to Sony, and I figured I didn't need this anymore. But I also had an adapter, and I still had the adapter after all those years. So I was like, you know what, let me try and find a Canon 10 to 18mm. And I purchased this, it was like open box or used or something. That's why there's no cap on the front of it, because it actually didn't come with one. And one of the issues with this is it's an APS-C lens. So I don't actually get a full 10 to 18mm when I use this. It's more like a 15-28 or something like that. I don't know the exact math, but I don't get the full 10 to 18mm. And I contemplated selling this lens because I didn't really use it. But at some point, I picked up my Blackmagic camera and I was like, you know what? This would be the perfect lens to use for that, because using this lens with any of my full frame cameras, I actually have to put them in crop mode, which reduces the image quality when I'm filming. I also had to modify this lens to work with my Blackmagic camera, because on the Blackmagic, I have a speed booster to go from micro 4/3 to EF mount. And the original lens mount that comes with this is actually plastic, and it protruded way too far out, so I wasn't able to use it with my speed booster. But luckily, I went on eBay, I found this one. It's a nice fancy metal one. I think it was like 40 bucks or something like that. So I was like, you know what? Let me keep this in case I ever need something wide angle on my Blackmagic camera. The other lens I mentioned earlier, which was the 24 to 105, is also primarily for the Blackmagic camera. Now, one of the good things about having Canon lenses is I can use them with both my Sony cameras and my Blackmagic camera, because I have adapters for Canon lenses to work on both of my cameras. I don't really use this on the Sony that much. I primarily bought it so I would have something extremely versatile when I'm using my Blackmagic camera. And it's a 24 to 105 f4. And you're probably wondering what this little orange rubber thing is on here. Essentially, if you've ever owned a Canon lens, you know that they all do this, but it has what's called zoom creep. So as I hold this here, you can see the barrel is extending without me having to touch it. When I got this lens and I first started using it on the gimbal with the Blackmagic camera, I noticed there was a lot of lens creep on it, so I needed a solution, and for the most part, this works. Another thing I forgot to mention about both of these Canon lenses is that when I use them with my Blackmagic camera, I have to use a Metabone speed booster in order to adapt the Canon EF mount to the micro 4/3 mount. and it bumps up the aperture capabilities on both of them. So I don't exactly know what the 10 to 18 millimeter turns to. I think because it's 4.5 to 5.6, it goes down to maybe like 3.2 or something like that. But I know for a fact that my f4, the 24 to 105 f4, turns into a 2.8, which is awesome because I get that little bit of extra light when I'm filming with this lens and that camera combo. For the last video that I filmed talking about what cameras I use, I actually had to take all the lenses off my bodies. Typically, each one of my cameras tends to have a lens on it, and it's put in my Pelican case or my backpack. But for that video, I had to take every single lens off, and I stacked them up, and I was like, you know what? I definitely have to do a video talking about all the lenses because I realized that I had a lot of them. I don't know if I'm planning to sell any of them anytime soon. There are some that I use a lot more than others, but unless I can think of a good reason to purchase another one or to sell one of the ones I have for another one, probably just gonna keep them either in the Pelican case on the shelf or lend them out to friends and stuff like that. I actually did give away a lens not too long ago. If you watch my H-Day vlog, I gave one of my friends my Sony A6300 lens. I gave him that lens because he wouldn't shut up about wanting to purchase it. And I was actually in the process of selling my Sony A6300, so I figured he would appreciate it, and he's a very big supporter of my YouTube channel, so I was like, you know what, take the lens, I know you're gonna put it to good use, and he was actually very happy with it. So that's the plan for my lenses, that's what I have. Guys, let me know what you thought about this video in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification so that way you can get notified when I post more videos. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.